As someone who wants a progressive majority in the next parliament, and as someone who wants to move our voting system to probably something like they have in Poland, where you get the options to be able to, I'll vote for this party first, but if they don't get enough votes, well, then I can now also put this party down next as well. So at least my vote doesn't get lost. Proportional representation, we talk about it all the time on this channel, but it is really important. We've talked about how important it would be, but to what a system would look like and the governments it would potentially form, well, we've got to look at what happened, especially in Poland. Now, Poland, when it often gets talked about, it often gets talked about in this idea that the far right in Europe is on the rise. And it was very much talked about partly because of the Peace and Justice Party, I believe it was called. Very, very much a far right group and a far right, party. And they stormed to power a couple of years ago, basically on the back of what were perceived to be massive conservative losses, really. And of course, the migrant crisis, especially in 2015. However, as all far right parties eventually find out, being in opposition is one thing where you can complain about the government, but where you become the government, where you are the government, where you actually have to sort out the problems that you have been complaining about and provide solutions to this problem is proving to be the ultimate Achilles heel for many of these far right parties throughout Europe. Whenever they get elected, almost immediately in the elections after, in popularity polling, they start to lose out because their main argument is how much better would we be if we were in power, deploying all our crazy, far right nonsense. It doesn't tend to turn out quite well. And to be honest, this really is in Poland a progressive victory. And especially when we talk about and often I want to sort of frame how Poland often gets talked about in sort of in sort of the foreign quarters, the foreign policy quarters in Europe. Europe is often described as the vision of what a post-communist democracy should look like. It's the shining example in many people's pointing to it, and especially in this election, because a lot of people, from what we know from the polls so far, have come out and said this is the highest turnout in Polish election history. Not since the fall of communism has so many people turned out. And what we have seen, as you can see from here, you'll see at the top in 3 of the age brackets, the orange group, and I think they are hopefully I get the pronunciation right, but they are very much a left-wing party called I think they're not the Social Democrats. I can't remember their name now, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But the important thing is, as you can see, from the top 3 age groups, from 18 to 19, they are the top. 30 to 39, once again, they are the top of that. 40 to 49, they are the top again. Now, this does show that, once again, in any sort of progressive voting system that we want, alliances are important. And especially when you've got a voting system like this, which allows your vote to go to multiple parties, what comes next is always important. Now, at the moment, we don't know how this coalition is going to look like. We don't know what negotiations are going to go on. But from what a lot of people are saying, they are fully expecting that the 3 big left parties are going to go into coalition together. That, at the moment, is what is expected. And I think Donald Tusk is expected to be the guy who ends up leading this coalition. And this is what I often worry about if we got PR, because we have seen in the last couple of years, especially from Momentum, they took the idea that because they had had a free, or at least they thought they were in charge, they had a free hand play, and that they got to essentially rule the roost. You may remember we talked recently about the uh, the PDP, the People Demand Democracy, sending an ultimatum to like the Labour Party and the Conservatives, demanding proportional representation. Coalitions do not work on demands or ultimatums. They work because the parties get together, they negotiate, they find where they have common ground, and then they negotiate with the areas where they don't. And that's what worries me, that we have a lot of people in this country that if we did get sort of PR and we did get multiple parties here, I would worry that we would go into a coalition that wouldn't last long because they would fall apart because they cannot agree, because each one would be demanding that their ideas are put forward more prominently. That is my worry. But like I say, that's a worry down the road. However, especially the other thing I want to talk about, especially in this, is that a lot of people are now asking, is this really the end of this rise of the far right in Europe? Because once again, in this context, you talked about Poland, Hungary, and Italy in this regard. Now, we've seen in Poland here the far right be booted by this coalition of left-wing parties. Could this happen, say, in Italy or even in Hungary, where you've had these far right parties in power, once again, not really solve the problems that they have been talking about, or been able to advance any solutions to these problems? So could this be the fate of, many of these parties there? We don't know, but a lot of people are obviously quite excited about this victory. I think quite rightly so. So I think there is a lot to celebrate in this victory, and of course, what happens next, what happens in this sort of this coalition that comes together in Poland, I think will be quite important as well, and what they go on to do. But more specifically, of course, one of the big things is we saw the far right government in Poland prior to this election making a big thing about banning weapons in Ukraine. And we talked about the reason why, because of that, because of Polish farmer grain, because of the war in Ukraine, the price of grain in Poland went up. So that made the farmers in Poland very happy, and that's who their audience were. That's who they were trying to sort of attract and get their vote. Does not seem to have worked that way. Seems to have gone down quite badly indeed, for the fact that they lost in 3, probably of the core demographic age groups who come out to vote, and especially well done as well for getting out the vote as well. Turnout in all elections is always important, and the big problem always is the 18 to 29 age bracket is a very, very big age group. Unfortunately, as we know from past, not just in Poland, but every country always has a problem of mobilizing the young to vote. So I'm really, really glad that they got that out. And to be honest, if there is any people out there from Poland who are involved in that campaign, I would love to know how you went and organized and motivated people from that. So, like I say, leave some comments down below about that, because I'd be very interested to see for myself. Could that be replicated over here? Because very likely in the next 12 months, we could probably find ourselves an election over here in the UK. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.